3 weeks and over 20 witnesses, and we are only about halfway through the Doomsday cult mom trial of Lori Vallow for the murder of her 2 children and Tammy Daybell, among a few other lesser charges. Well, let's recap what we know at this point. As you know, I'm America's attorney, and I want you to know the rules of the game. So lawyer up, subscribe, and right now, let's recap this trial at its midpoint, question mark? After jury selection, the prosecution and the defense gave their competing opening statements. Now, I've already broken down my thoughts on those speeches in this other video. Make sure you check that out. But since we've gone over the opening statements already, let's just focus on the first 7 witnesses that testified in week 1. Most of these were family and friends of Lori Vallow, but there were also a couple of detectives who testified. Now, to me, the highlight of week 1 had to be JJ's grandmother, Kay. As the first witness, she started out strong by telling the jury how inquisitive Lori Vallow was about Charles Vallow's life insurance policy after his death, and some sneaky little Amazon searches. A beach wedding dress, a bathing suit, men's white linen top, pants, and wedding rings? Wow, sounds perfect for a beach wedding in Hawaii. All of these items were searched on Charles Vallow's Amazon account. And according to Grandma Kay, they were searched over 2 weeks before Tammy Daybell's death. Now let's take a second to analyze the strategy behind choosing a witness to start a trial to begin with. When you're in a trial with multiple witnesses for your case, it's like a relay at a track meet. Now, while runners carry a baton, the baton in a trial is the jury's attention, the through line in the narrative that ties each witness and piece of evidence together. Now, as a lawyer, you're trying to get to the finish line of the case with as much of the jury's attention as possible so that they follow you to the outcome that you want. Usually, you want to start with your second strongest witness, and you want to end with your strongest witness. Some trial theorists reverse that order, and there are reasons to go with your best witness first as well. But there are some powerful psychological reasons for this batting order. Although members of the jury are admonished to keep an open mind, and many of us believe that we are open-minded, the reality, the psychological reality inside of each of us is that we really, really want to decide what we think in a situation, in any situation, but especially in an important, significant situation as early as possible. Juries tend to interpret everything that they hear based on the impression that they get from the first witness that they hear from. Their minds are framed or anchored by the first things that they see and hear and think. And that framing is a necessary psychological tool for sorting out information that comes in the future. And so if you're the prosecutor, you want that framing to be as good as it can be for your version of the events. So you start very strong. And you want to finish strong. Why is that? Well, because juries give the last witness more weight because of something called recency bias. We tend to remember and lean on and believe the things that we have heard most recently. And because the presentation that you made through your witnesses is about to be attacked by the presentation that the defense makes when they put their case on, you might want to go out on a high note. I shouldn't have done that. But you start strong. You want to put the less pivotal witnesses in the middle, and then at the end, you want to end as strongly as possible. So if the testimony that we got from the first witness, from Grandma Kay, describing the obvious pre-death wedding planning, I can't imagine what's waiting for us at the end of this trial. The rest of the personal testimony made by Lori's past friends and family member helped the prosecution paint the picture of just how deep into this doomsday ideology Lori had fallen into. Melanie Gibbs, Lori's former friend, explained to the jury this idea that people are possessed by dark spirits are considered dark people or zombies. She also recounts how Lori, at one point or another, considered her deceased husband and his mother, her father, and both of her children as dark. Wow, that's dark. The prosecution also put Lori's deceased brother's ex-wife on the stand. Alex Cox is considered to have been very involved in Lori and Chad's schemes. He is also responsible for the death of Charles Vallow. The original claim of self-defense for that act has been put into question based on several witnesses' testimony from week 1 and week 2 of the trial. We'll get into that later. First, let's focus on the testimony of Zulema Pasternak. One part of her testimony seems to have aided the prosecution's grand theft charge. Well, how's that? Pasternak recalls a conversation she had with Lori in which Lori admitted that she was funding her Idaho lifestyle with Tylee and JJ's separate Social Security funds from their deceased fathers. Another highlight from Pasternak's time on the stand is her recollection of one of the casting sessions. Now, this is not a Hollywood casting audition. A casting session was a meeting in which members of their religion would meet up to seek to banish the evil spirits that were inhabiting the bodies of their loved ones. Zulema, Chad, Lori, and Melanie Gibbs happened to be at one of these sessions the day that Tammy Daybell experienced an attempted shooting at her home. Pasternak recalled that Lori received a phone call that made her very angry. Lori then told Zulema that idiot can't do anything right on his own. Let's review. We know Alex Cox has a habit of shooting people to protect Lori. We know that their group considered Tammy dark. The dots are dotting, but are they connecting? Detective Hermosillo and Detective Duncan also testified during week 1. Detective Hermosillo gave the jury insight into the search for the children at Daybell's residence. He was asked to describe in graphic detail how and in what state he found the children's remains. During cross-examination, the defense took a chance to ask Hermosillo where Lori was on the day Tammy Daybell died. Now, this line of questioning shows the strategy that they laid out in their opening statement. Lori Daybell technically has an alibi for all of the deaths for which she stands accused. Technically, Lori Vallow was in Hawaii the day that Tammy Daybell died. Detective Duncan then went on the stand to give testimony about the scene at the shooting of Charles Vallow. His testimony, along with Scott Cowden and Sergeant Nathan Moffitt's, really cast some doubt on the supposed self-defense story that Alex Cox gave about Vallow's death. Now, neither Lori nor Chad are being charged yet with Charles Vallow's death, but creating doubt around the circumstances of his death helps the prosecution cast shadows around Lori Vallow. After that, we move into week 2 of the trial, and that was started off by none other than Lori Vallow's son, Colby Ryan. One interesting note from his testimony is that he reveals that Lori told him Charles Vallow had died of a heart attack. As we all know, he died from 2 gunshot wounds. Ryan also told the jury about how his messages with his sister Tylee stopped sounding like her after early September. This could imply that Lori Vallow was posing as Tylee to avoid suspicion. If this is true, then it just adds to the prosecutor's narrative. After all, why would Lori Vallow try to cover up a death that she had no part in? The prosecution then played a recording of a phone call between Colby and his mother that clearly shows that he doesn't believe that she had no part in the deaths. Lest we forget the grand theft charges, the next witness brought in was a Social Security investigator. With both of her children's Social Security payments, Lori Vallow was raking in almost $2,000 per child. Based on testimony from the Social Security investigator and even Lori's friends, it seems like Lori was using this money to fund her joblessness. The investigator explained to the court that the Social Security Administration needed to be notified about life changes that can impact benefits. Now, this includes things like moving homes, new marriages, missing children. These are all things Lori failed to disclose to the SSA. This means that for around 4 months, Lori was receiving Social Security payments for her children who were not alive. Next, we have our first expert witness in the trial. So far, all other witnesses were themselves a part of the events because they were friends or family of Lori Vallow in some way. But this witness, Mike Douglas, is an FBI forensic accountant special agent who presented timelines of various aspects of the case. Timelines showing key dates, bank deposits, spending habits from the time in between Tylee and her father's death and JJ and Charles Vallow's death. He also presented evidence that showed that Chad increased Tammy Daybell's life insurance policy just over a month before her death. And he married Lori Vallow just 4 days after he began receiving payments from her life insurance. Now, all of this testimony aided the grand theft and murder charges that have been levied against Lori Vallow. Week 3 started us off with a lot of technical and technological testimony. Both Detective Stubbs and FBI tactical specialist Nicole Heidman took the stand to talk about their discoveries from electronic search warrants. They discovered that Lori, Chad, and Alex all had several burner phones. The two also went into both Chad and Lori's search histories. It seems that both had been searching for wedding items and accessories before and immediately after Tammy Daybell's death. Before. That's a big deal. FBI Special Agent Nick Balance was next on the stand. Balance is a part of the Cellular Analysis Survey team and submitted a report tracking Lori Vallow's phone records and Google accounts. Communications between Lori, Chad, and Alex on September 9th were also revealed. Now, according to Balance, a lot of communication was tracked between the three on that day, including Cox's phone being near Daybell's property. Lori's sister was also put on the stand where she made it clear that she believed Lori Vallow had harmed her children. That is not gonna look great to a jury. Her own sister doesn't believe her. And after learning that Lori's son doesn't believe her the week before, that's not a good look. Now, in the last couple of days, the cause of death of J.J. Vallow was also revealed by Dr. Garth Warren's testimony: asphyxiation due to the plastic bag on his head. Tylee's remains were too burnt to determine a cause of death. So, how has this testimony so far stacked up against the charges? Well, obviously, it's been damning. You always want to keep in mind in a murder trial, when there is a body, that somebody has in fact died. It's not a theoretical pursuit like, oh, someone is missing and we want to try to prove that they were murdered. If you have a body, and on top of that, you have an unnatural cause of death, you have almost all the makings of a murder conviction. The prosecutor is merely trying to prove who it is. And the world in which a child lives is quite small. They don't have enemies. The people who might be willing to kill a child is a very small number. But the list of people who might be willing to kill that same child and the sibling of that child is an even smaller number. You need motive, you need access. All of these people, all of them, in the whole world could fit together in one phone booth at the same time. But just as soon as you have a cover-up, then generally you have your killer. How does Vallow try to get out of this? It's not really that hard. She just has to coherently and cohesively convince the jury of another story. Not that she didn't do it, because the absence of a narrative is itself not a narrative. She's not walking out of that courtroom unless she can functionally prove the identity of whoever it is that did it. When all the evidence is built together by the prosecutor to demonstrate that it was you, there's really no hope in deconstructing the entire presentation. She's gonna have to prove somehow who it was other than her. Because right now it's looking like it was her. And that pretty much wraps up the last 3 weeks up to the day that this video was recorded of the Doomsday Cult Mom trial. So far, which witness do you believe has made the most impact on the jury? An expert witness like Mike Douglas or family testimony like Kay Woodcock? Let me know your pro se opinion in the comments down below. And if you missed watching it a few weeks back, make sure you check out my analysis of the opening statements in this trial. I will be back soon for a further trial recap. But in the meantime, you know you need to subscribe. Bye.